And look, she bought everybody sandwiches.
Yo, what it do, you guys? It's your boy Jay. You already know from the All Hell No Reaction channel. Tonight, we're going to dive into more so a serious topic. This is going to be involving Karmelo Anthony and the verdict that was handed down to him 4 or 5 hours ago. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of this case. There was a guilty verdict that was handed down to Karmelo for the death of Austin Metcalf. Guys, I'm not here to discuss black or white. Wrong or right is what we're here after. That's what we're seeking. When you really look at it at the end of the day, both families still lose. You have a family who is possibly going to have to visit their son in prison for a long time. You also have a family who, no matter how I feel about the Metcalf father, I'm going to take it from the mother's standpoint. You still have a mother who has lost a child. You got the media trying to bait a race war versus trying to really find the answer of who was at fault when it comes to this. One of the things I was always taught is this. It's not what you know, it's who you know. This right here hit the net. And I read the headline for you. It says, "How is this legal? Austin's dad is at a house party with the judge and the defense attorney." I'm gonna let this sit here. Having drinks. Is this not a conflict of interest? Usually what's supposed to happen is if a judge has a relationship with anyone that he is, going to be presiding over the case for, he is supposed to recuse himself. There are a lot of fishy things going on with this. Did a little research today. I heard that this judge here has been trying to expedite this case, even holding trial on Saturdays. He has been shortening the lunch breaks that the jurors take, as well as the maybe 20-25 minute breaks that they get to kind of stretch their legs. He's been knocking those down to possibly 10 minutes. They say he's in a hurry to get this case over with. The other thing is this. Karmelo was judged by 6 white jurors. Most of the time when they're doing their selection for jurors, they try to get a variety ethnicity wise. How is it that you guys feel like they were able to get over with 6 white jurors? Let's be 100% honest. A lot of times it's hard for someone who lives a different lifestyle from you to understand what you're going through, to empathize, put themselves in your shoes. Do you guys feel like this case was railroaded from the beginning? I'm also hearing things in reference to Karmelo's defense, saying that they didn't feel like the defense went hard enough. Also heard something saying that the defense and the DA were partying together too, and close associates. So tonight, y'all, we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get into it real heavy. I appreciate all the support that y'all have been giving me. If you love the content, be sure to do 3 things for me: like, share, and subscribe. We're about to hit these IG streets and hit commentary from one of the most controversial content creators that has hit the net in a while, Charleston White. You guys also hear how he changed his stance in reference to who he is putting support behind. So I want y'all to take a listen to this video. Y'all tell me what y'all think. Do y'all think at this point here, Charleston White, when this case originally went down, jumped to judgment too quick? Or are y'all feeling the new findings and his new heartfelt initiative for Karmelo and Karmelo's family? Let's get into it, y'all.
In the beginning, I joined with the Metcalf family. I made a mistake. I repented and I spit on the Metcalf family and I joined the right family, the nigger family. But they're not the nigger family. That's an honorable black man and an honorable black mother who have their children in the same household, unlike the Metcalf family. Austin Metcalf and his brother had been suspended the week before. That's why they didn't know Karmelo was under the tent. It wasn't Karmelo who had been suspended. It was Hunter and the Metcalf brothers who had been suspended. Why? They left track practice, according to the coach, and went fishing. So the coach lied and said, well, I technically didn't suspend them. I just gave them. Well, they're saying that Austin was given permission to run the tent. No, he wasn't. The coach just told him, step up and be a leader. He didn't run the tent. Those are lies that's being told, so y'all follow me. So the Metcalf brothers didn't recognize who the nigger was, but they knew the nigger. They knew the nigger. They were suspended last week. The kid who says, oh, I didn't know Karmelo, have text messages that prove that, guess what? He used to call Karmelo, hey, come pick me up, sir. Let's go play basketball together. Karmelo and this kid got multiple pictures, at least 9 different pictures that were presented to the jury to prove that the state's witness lied about not knowing Karmelo.
And y'all, this kid name is Eddie. From what I hear, and I don't know everything that's surrounded Eddie, I don't know what type of pressure that has been put on him by the DA's office, because guess what now? Sometimes the DA office now, they play some dirty games. But how is it that Eddie goes from hanging with Karmelo to trying to disassociate himself and downplay their friendship? Man, Eddie, that hurt me, dog. Because is this your partner? You stand on that. And I understand that peer pressure can be something. But right is right, wrong is wrong. Now at the same time, partner or not, if Eddie saw something that he felt like was wrong on Karmelo's end, then he should do his due diligence and speak up. But what does that have to do with your disassociation of a friendship? Because you still can say, hey, look, this is my friend. I watched this altercation and this person was in the right, but this person was in the wrong. That don't mean that you disassociate yourself from being friends with Karmelo. So do you guys think that Eddie was peer pressured? Folding under pressure? Or do you feel like his account of the situation was 100% truthful? Let's get back into it, y'all.
Then Karmelo's mother took a picture that blew their mind. So how can a kid with epilepsy, and by the way, he never brought a knife to school. It was a tool. What kind of tool? A Boy Scouts tool. And it wasn't 6 inches, it wasn't 4 inches. It's a little small tool, compact tool. What kind of tool they call it, Mel?
A multi
A multi-tool that the Boy Scout uses.
You got screwdrivers, everything on it.
Wasn't a knife. It wasn't a knife. But since you guys can't go to the trial, you can't be in the trial, you're not talking to nobody that's reliable in the trial, y'all don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So let me just break this all the way down. A black man has a gun, he gets killed. I thought we get to have guns. A black man says, put your hands on me and watch what I do. That's a threat. Well, according to all the witness statements, in the beginning and now, that during the whole altercation, Karmelo Anthony never stood up. He never stood up. As a matter of fact, the Metcalf brother had to come 3 rows up to come confront him. Karmelo never got up. Karmelo never said, touch me and see what happens. That's what the initial report says. He never stated that. So this is what they've coached the kids up. They brought in the lies. Why? Because all the coaches went to the high school. But one thing you cannot deny initial police statements.
Yeah, you guys, y'all tell me, what do y'all feel about what Charleston said? You know, he hit a few points in reference to that. You know, one of the things is when this story first broke, there were so many things that we found out right now that were untrue. When the story first broke, I was told that, hey, you know, Karmelo defended himself with a track cleat. You know, those track cleats come with spikes. Then it went to, hey, he had a knife. Charleston White is saying he didn't have a knife. He had a multi-tool that Boy Scouts use. Also, there are different findings about the Metcalf boys in reference to them being school bullies. Being versed in jiu-jitsu since they were 4 or 5 years old. There are so many things that's going on with this case that hasn't come to the light. Do you guys feel like there was evidence that was hidden? I know that in every case, lawyers are always going to, whether it's the defense or whether it's the prosecution, they're going to omit certain things that would make their client look like a guilty party. Once again, y'all, this is a sad case. We're going to jump into it now. We're going to get lit up in reference to what we're about to talk about. I want y'all to take this ride with me. Tonight, we are going to go ahead and look at our guy, defense attorney Jamal Kersey. He's going to break some things down to us, you guys, in reference to this case and some of the findings. Y'all rock out with me. Let's make it do what it do.
You guys have been paying attention to this Karmelo Anthony murder trial, but it is getting towards the end. We're actually going into closing arguments, and I had almost forgotten about this trial. The case actually started, the incident took place in April of last year, and that pretty much is on pace for a murder case. If you have a homicide or a murder, manslaughter type cases, those are generally going to take about a year to get to trial if they do go to trial. But I had just kind of forgotten about this thing, and so the trial started recently. It's been on a pretty good pace. This judge has been said to have skipped breaks or not take breaks, take short lunches. They even were in session on a Saturday, which that's completely unheard of for me. I know in California, we do not do that, at least not in Southern California. I don't know about other parts of California. California is a big state, but I've never heard of that trial being in session on a Saturday. But apparently, this judge is trying to get through this thing as quickly as possible. And so here we are closing arguments. And I was really surprised that the defense rested so quickly, or that the defense rested without calling Karmelo Anthony. And I'll explain why. But essentially, the defense's position is that Karmelo Anthony was acting in self-defense. From the prosecution's perspective, I think they feel like they have an open and shut case, and rightfully so, right? There's no reason for the prosecution to really be nervous at all.
All right, y'all. So I'm gonna stop this here. I'm gonna give my little feedback, and then we're gonna let this video continue. I'm not going to agree with everything that Jamal says. I'm gonna hope that he's not biased. One question that I do want to ask, though, is why is it that the defense did not put Karmelo Anthony on the stand? I, off bat, can only think about two reasons, y'all. Either there was a situation where they felt like he may not be a good person to put on a stand. They thought that he would possibly get rattled. by the DA, get angry, and overall, it wouldn't be a good characterization for him. Because, you know, the DA is going to try to, they're already painting you as someone who's a thug. They're already painting you as someone who has a short fuse. So by way of him getting on that stand, them asking him certain questions that may irritate him, that may make him raise his voice, that's all for the betterment of them. The second reason that the defense probably didn't put him on the stand was, for some reason, I guess they thought that they had an open and shut closed case where they didn't have to put him on there, and they felt like the evidence that they were putting out was going to be good enough to swing the jury in a favorable verdict. Of course, we know that didn't happen. But if I am on the defense, I want the jurors to hear from Karmelo. I want them to feel his pain. Once again now, Karmelo never lied when he got an investigation. He said, yes, I did this. I did it to protect myself. Yes, 100% he admitted that this is something that he did. I'm still second guessing the choice not to place him on that stand. Let's get back into it, y'all.
About what the outcome of this case is going to be. I mean, at the end of the day, you had a situation where there was this confrontation. I heard a lot about this tent culture and how in these track meets, the different high schools have their tents, and you know, every school is under their own tent. You generally don't have students from one school going under another school's tent, because each tent is like its own locker room, if you will, but just on, you know, on this track. And so we had Karmelo Anthony going under the Memorial High School tent, and I had just found that to be random. Like, what was he doing there? Did he know anybody? You know, just why were you under another school's tent? But then it turned out, we learned that it had rained the night before, and so it was a little wet, but it may have rained the day of or the morning of. And so Karmelo Anthony's school was the only school that didn't have a tent, right? So if it had been sprinkling or raining and somebody just wants to get out of the rain, then that could be an explanation for why he ended up going under another school's tent. But we also learned that he had a friend that went to Memorial High School, and that was Eddie, right? So Eddie, obviously teammates or classmates with Austin Metcalf, the one who was stabbed to death. He knew Karmelo Anthony, and they had at least some sort of relationship. And apparently Eddie downplayed that relationship during his testimony, but I believe the defense had presented evidence that, you know, they at least hung out at you know, outside of school and had pictures together and hung out and all these different type of things. So that at a minimum had established on some level why Karmelo Anthony ended up in that tent, right? And so they had actually greeted each other and, you know, exchanged pleasantries or what have you. And then Karmelo Anthony apparently had just stuck around and was there for, you know, longer than perhaps other people felt like he should be welcomed, and he ends up getting confronted. But interestingly enough, the prosecution witnesses, a large part students, the students who were observing this situation, they seemed to indicate that the confrontation in terms of you can't be here and that you need to leave, that it did not start out aggressive, right? It didn't start out aggressive. It only escalated to aggression when Karmelo Anthony was essentially non-responsive and just refused to leave. And then
look, y'all, I'm gonna tell y'all the same thing I tell my son. You know, he in high school. I tell him to think with logic. I tell him not to put himself in a situation overall that's not going to be the best for him. Once again, man, shame on you, Eddie. Shame on you, Eddie. Y'all heard Jamal say, look, Karmelo's track team is the only team out there that didn't have a tent to shelter them from the rain. Hell, I ain't trying to get sick either. And then you got to understand, most males' minds and brains don't mature until they get 25 to 30 years old. You're still dealing with high school kids. Don't nobody want to be punked out in front of their peers. So he was probably like, look, I'm going to leave this tent when I'm good and ready. I'm not bothering anybody. Y'all are not going to come up to me and punk me out in front of everybody and make me move. You're still dealing with children here, y'all. The brain is still developing. Yes, right is right, wrong is wrong, but it is hard for us to catch or cast judgment if we were not there. And guess what? There's no full camera footage of what happened. So everybody is relying on witness statements.
When they got aggressive with him, but by all accounts, this thing happened very fast, and some people ended up seeing the push, but they didn't. So Austin Metcalf was said to have pushed Karmelo Anthony, and he's actually observed on video where you see a jerking motion from the push. So apparently there was security camera footage, but obviously that camera wasn't necessarily trained on the tent. It just happened to be capturing that area, and it was very far away. So the footage that they did have was very grainy. It was not by any means high quality. And sometimes that happens, I've had plenty of, I've had a number of assault crimes, attempted murder, even murder that's captured on cameras. And the angles might be really bad, or the quality is terrible, but video does help generally. It's a lot more reliable than eyewitness testimony, right? Because memories fade. Sometimes people may have recalled seeing something in a way they thought they saw it, when you see a video, the video contradicts what they saw. So anytime you can have your hands on some video to depict what happened in an incident, that's going to be ideal. But in many cases, the footage is just not great. And so the accounts that we heard are that this happened out of nowhere, and many people didn't even see the knife come out and didn't see Metcalf get stabbed. They kind of saw what happened after the fact. There were people from other tents who had heard a bit of the commotion, but it just sounded like, boys being boys and being a bit more riled up, if you will, but nothing suggested that there was going to be a weapon pulled out, and nothing suggested that certainly that, someone's going to be stabbed on that day. And so, and that was something that also came out, saw a lot of questions in the media. Why was Karmelo Anthony, holding a knife? Why did he have a knife in his bag? Obviously, he never ended up testifying, and so we don't know the answer to that. But
I know why he was. Because you got twin brothers. It stated that both of them were under the tent. I'm guaranteeing you one thing. I'm guaranteeing that if one brother jumps on Karmelo, the other brother is going to follow behind. They already stated that these two brothers were 6'1", 215 pounds. Look at Karmelo. He looked like he may be 140, 150 pounds soaking wet. You think he gonna risk the chance of having these two dudes jump on him? Or is he gonna defend himself? Once again, you guys, I'm not saying that pulling out this tool is right. But let's not tiptoe the lines of self-defense. I've heard some people say, hey, that push was assault, and Karmelo had the right to defend himself. I've heard certain people say that push was not enough for him to brandish a weapon. Y'all get in the comments. Y'all tell me what y'all think. We're going to get back to Jamal and his commentary. Let's ride.
I just think that was an interesting call that they ultimately did not call Karmelo Anthony to the stand. Now, a lot of people had some criticism for the defense and how they didn't appear to be attacking enough, or they weren't being aggressive enough. And it's hard to say, without sitting there and observing what's going on. But one thing I can say is that every trial lawyer has his or her own style. And some trial lawyers are very aggressive and some are not so aggressive. You all have your own styles. I think that on some level, people just expected more from the defense. But realistically, my thought was maybe the whole defense would rest on Karmelo Anthony's testimony, because when it comes to a self-defense case, really there's a lot that you're not actually disputing, right? For me, like I'm of the camp of, I just don't like wasting cross-examination questions. If I'm not attacking perception, if I'm not attacking credibility, if I'm not attacking bias, then I'm leaving a cross-examination alone. Sometimes there might be witnesses that the prosecution calls and I have no questions. If there's nothing for me to attack on, I'm not going to just stand there and ask questions just to ask questions. I like to be respectful of the jury's time. And I've found that on some level they appreciate that, right? What jurors don't like is when you see a puzzled look on jurors' face when you're asking questions. That's not a good sign. And so it's better to just be efficient and not ask questions if you don't have anything of value to explore. And so I would think, in a self-defense case, again, there's so much that you're not necessarily attacking, because you're not even saying that your client didn't do what he's charged with doing, whether that's, punching somebody in the face and knocking them out, shooting them, or like in this case, stabbing. He, in fact, Karmelo Anthony never denied having stabbed Metcalf, right?
And you guys, he's saying the same thing that I heard in reference to some of the research that I did. The other reason it was important for me, you guys, to get a attorney's perspective is because they know the law. They know the law. It's easy to conversate amongst your peers who may not know all the laws, and we're just going off of emotions. But it's different to get someone's perspective who actually knows the law. Now, jury is still out on Mr. Jamal and whether he's being biased in reference to the Metcalfs, or do you guys think that he's playing the game even? He's unbiased when it comes to both parties. Y'all tell me what y'all think.
He said that when they interviewed him and they were saying, allegedly, and he said, no, not allegedly, I did it. But his position was that he was acting in self-defense, and you don't necessarily have to put your client on the stand in order to put forth a self-defense theory, but it definitely helps if the position is reasonable, and that is a really big if. So let's look at where you wouldn't necessarily have to put your client on the stand. So if, as the evidence comes out, you are able to establish whether, you know, through the prosecution's witnesses, so whether you're drawing that information out on cross, or if you call your own witnesses to be able to establish that your client was being attacked, and so therefore they would have been apprehensive of imminent serious bodily injury or death, then that would be a situation where they would be permitted to use deadly force, because Texas is not, it's a stand your ground state. It's a stand your ground state, meaning that you don't have to back down, you don't have to retreat, you don't have to run away, even if it would be safe for you to do so. So you are able to stand your ground and fight. But the thing is, there has to be the evidence there that, you know, objectively a jury is going to be able to see that, okay, well, I can see why you would respond with force. And I think the main issue is going to be, you know, Karmelo Anthony responded not only with force, but he responded with deadly force. And so, you know, that's the whole thing of, you know, he escalated it to a point where it just was not necessary. That's going to...
Y'all, I'm confused right now, though, because if you're locked into this video, I want to know what is considered deadly force, because earlier Jamal also said that deadly force, in my opinion, could be Karmelo defending himself. So let's say if Austin pushed Karmelo and Karmelo decided to punch Austin in the face. If he punched Austin in the face, and that was a blow that knocked him unconscious, or even worse, that could still be looked at in the juror's eyes as being uncalled for. So you're saying that the knife or multi-Swiss tool, whatever it was, Boy Scout wise, was not cause for. But then you're also saying a punch, if they were fighting, would not also have been cause for. So what would have been cause for? Him curling up in a fetal position and possibly letting these two twin brothers jump him? I don't understand. Y'all tell me. I may be tripping. Y'all let me know what's going on.
To be the prosecution's theory. In fact, the prosecution is saying that he goaded Metcalf into attacking him, right? So where he says, put your hands on me and see what's going to happen. You know, there's what they're saying is you cannot basically provoke somebody into attacking you, and then when they do attack you, then you turn around and attack back and call it self-defense.
Bullshit.
You cannot do that. So I think that even if we take the stabbing off the table, let's just say we were talking about an assault, maybe an aggravated assault or an aggravated battery charge based on, so Metcalf ends up pushing Anthony and he responds basically cold cocking him and knocking him out instead of stabbing him. I think based on what the prosecution's stance is, they would find that even that would be improper because there was never a level of aggression that rose to the level that he would be able to respond with any force.
How the hell do they know that, though? They were not present. How do they know that Karmelo was not in fear of his life? It's easy when you're on the other side and you're not the person that's in this situation, where you may feel like you are in fight or flight. It's easy for somebody on the outside to come up with all type of scenarios that you can do other than what you did, because they're not in that situation. This is why I feel like it's important to have jurors of different ethnicities, because when you're dealing with people who are of different ethnicities, they've been through certain things in their life. close calls with law enforcement, close calls with people who may not like them because of the color of their skin, who may also have been in the fight or flight type of mindset. So it's easy for you to judge someone when you're not in that position in reference to what you think they should have done. Once again, right is right, wrong is wrong. I stand on the side of right, but it's hard for an individual to judge a situation that they're not going through personally.
You smoke crack, don't you?
Also, the fact that since Karmelo Anthony was the provoker, then in that sense, you cannot claim self-defense after you provoke somebody into attacking you as your reason for attacking them back. So I think that he would have a problem based on what I've been hearing thus far with just punching Metcalf, let alone pulling out a knife and stabbing him. And that's where you would want to hear from him, right? Because he would be the one. He's the only person in the world. He's the only person in the world who can look the jury in their faces and tell them, this is why I did what I did. I feared for my life, or I feared serious bodily injury, and it was imminent. It was about to happen. I had no other choice but to pull out that knife and stab him, right? That's what he would have to establish. And without him saying that, then, it becomes a situation where you have to try and glean it from the evidence and make these arguments. So that tells me something that is very critical, and that is the defense did not really have much confidence in putting him on the stand and asserting that position. And you can see why they would have issue with doing that. And that's because, it doesn't appear to have been there, right? There was a confrontation, obviously, with him being under a rival tent. He was clearly outnumbered, but the testimony established that he wasn't necessarily being surrounded by the track team. He wasn't being jumped. He was at most.
So Jamal, I got a question for you, brother. Let's say if Karmelo is your son, what is it that you would suggest that he do? This is a commentary that I want from you. Put yourself in someone, another parent's shoes. If this is your child, what would you direct? What directives, what suggestions would you give to your child in this situation? Man, brother, I'm trying to understand some of your logic. I don't know if there's a situation where you're trying not to offend somebody because you want more clientele. But once again, we're seekers of the truth. We're not tap dancing for nobody. We're going to tell it how it is. As far as I'm concerned, you could almost be the seventh juror. Because what I'm looking for from you as a lawyer is to give both sides of the game. And right now, the only thing I'm hearing is Karmelo is at fault for this. Karmelo is at fault for that. But what about the Metcalfs? What about Austin? No matter if someone says, hey, put your hand on me and I'm going to do this. What accountability is held there for Austin for continuing to still put his hands on someone who hasn't put their hands on him first? Are you going to talk about that? Or are we going to stay talking about Karmelo and what you feel like he has done wrong?
Kind of pushed. And so a push, just being pushed, simply is not going to justify the use of deadly force. I'm sorry. All right, we're back. Sorry, my camera got hot. It overheated. But So the prosecution, they have
Your camera overheated because your camera said, boy, you on some BS, man. Camera said, hey, man, give me a break because my boy right here, he done lost his marbles. That's why that camera cut off. But we're going to still hear you out, man. Like I say, because I am definitely interested in your point of view as an active lawyer regarding this case.
to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this stabbing was not carried out in self-defense, right? So that is generally in all murder cases, that's something that the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, that it was not justified homicide or that it wasn't a person acting in self-defense. But I think that the prosecution feels very confident that they're going to be able to meet that burden. Because again, there wasn't really anything that came out during the testimony that would demonstrate objectively that Karmelo Anthony had reason to believe that he was in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death. That is just not something that we heard in this testimony. And so that is definitely something that the defense would have wanted to draw out if it actually existed. And so that might be why we did not hear from Karmelo Anthony. And interestingly enough, there's a difference between, every state has its own laws, but here in California, we have something called imperfect self-defense. And so imperfect self-defense says that if the jury basically believes the defendant, right? So if the defendant takes a stand and they say that I believed that I was in imminent danger of, suffering great bodily injury or dying, and so therefore I used deadly force. If the jury says, hey, we believe what you're saying, right? We believe what you're saying, but your belief just was not reasonable, right? Because there's a subjective element and an objective element. The subjective element talks to or speaks to what was the defendant's specific subjective state of mind, what was going on in his head. And then the objective element says, basically using the reasonable, prudent person standard, can we say that objectively your belief was reasonable? And so if they say, well, we believe you, and we believe you in your subjective beliefs, and we think that it was objectively reasonable, then that's going to be self-defense, right? But if the jury says, well, we believe you, but we just don't believe that your belief was reasonable, then that would be what's called imperfect self-defense, and that's going to be, a lesser included offense, or it's going to be a lesser charge than your murder. So Texas does not have imperfect self-defense. So basically it's an all or nothing thing. You have to not only have your subjective belief and that be reasonable, but also objectively it has to be reasonable. It has to be a reasonable belief. And if it's not, then that's going to be murder. Or if we're talking about an assault with a deadly weapon or something other than a homicide, you still have that standard. And so in this situation, that's absolutely something that the defense would have had to establish. There's nothing that I've heard thus far that would give me any reason to believe that a jury is going to find Karmelo Anthony's actions reasonable. And this is just, a sad situation, obviously. There can be...
Man, cut it out, man. You don't care about Karmelo Anthony or his family. I put my glasses on because I'm trying to see through this BS that you're talking about right now. This bull job that you're talking about right now. Yes, I do agree with you in reference to there is no logic behind the defense not putting Karmelo Anthony on the stand. But once again, and it could just be me and y'all hop in the comments, man, I feel like your boy a little bit biased, man. Like I said, I don't know if you're trying to get some of these clients off of this video, my brother, but this ain't it. If you're going to speak on this topic, I want you to speak from both sides of the game. I want you to hold Austin Metcalf not only as a victim in your eyes, but why not give him and put accountability on him in reference to the show? Because you never said anything about that. You didn't say, hey, you know something? Austin was wrong for putting his hands on Karmelo. Never once have I heard you say that. You just said, oh, he pushed him, and because he pushed him, Karmelo's actions weren't justified. Once again, we're not talking with emotions. We're thinking about logic here. And I'm giving you the opportunity to talk about both sides. I don't know if you and the prosecution are going to have dinner tonight or what, brother. But this ain't it.
All kinds of reasons why he might have carried a knife. I don't know where, I don't know where he's from. I don't know what the neighborhood is like, but I do know that, from my experience as a criminal defense attorney of 17 years, I've seen plenty of people who are good, honest, hardworking people who either carry a firearm or carry a knife to protect themselves because they either know someone who's been attacked or they've been attacked themselves, or they're just in fear of being attacked. And so they just keep a weapon on them. That's the reality. And sometimes it's people who are prohibited from possessing firearms, and they may be hardworking, honest, just good people, but they have something on their record that prohibits them from possessing a firearm, but they still feel, that whole situation, I'd rather be, judged by 12 than carried out by 6, right? And
whose logic is that, my guy? Who says that? Because right now what you're trying to do is spit black rhetoric. You said, hey, I don't know what type of neighborhood he was raised in. Bro, have you not done your due diligence in reference to research? Because Karmelo Anthony's parents stayed in a middle-class suburban neighborhood. You may have him confused with some of these projects and ghettos in South Central, but he wasn't raised like that. Did you really do your due diligence in reference to learning his background, where he stayed, how he was from a character standpoint as a kid prior to this incident here? Or are you just talking out your ass? Because right now it seems like you're talking out your ass. And that whole I'd rather be carried by 6 than judged by 12 or whatever the case is, bro, that's black rhetoric, jargon that you've heard from the black community. Like, what's going on with you, bro? What's going on with you, dog?
Rightly or wrongly, that is a mentality, and we're just not going to hear why Karmelo Anthony had that knife on his person, and we're not going to hear from him what exactly was the reason why he was in fear for his life and why he ultimately did. We heard from in his statement to the police where he said, he put his hands on me. I told him not to do that. But beyond that, it doesn't appear that we have any further detail on what, led to that subjective belief that great bodily injury, serious bodily injury, or...
Y'all, I can't take no more. I gotta get Sambo up out of here, man. I was hoping, by way of hearing his commentary, that he was going to break down things from both sides. That's fair. I'm not looking for him just to defend Karmelo Anthony. I'm not looking for him just to defend Austin Metcalf, but that seems like what we are getting. Once again, never once did I hear him say Austin shouldn't have pushed him. Austin shouldn't have pushed Karmelo. He shouldn't have approached him. Never once did we hear him say, you know what? When Austin saw Karmelo under their tent, he should have went and got a coach, went and got an adult to handle the situation. All the blame, once again, is going on Karmelo. Man, we got to get this used car salesman, I'm sorry, y'all, up out of here. But one of the things I want y'all to do is give me your feedback. Do you think that this lawyer here was unbiased and he was keeping things 100% real? Do you feel like he was biased in reference to the actions that took place and he was one-sided in the prosecution's favor? I want to hear y'all commentary. Once again, it's your boy Jay. We're going to continue to follow up on this story. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for tuning in to All Hell No. Y'all jump in those comments. Let me know what you think. Y'all have a good night. Peace out.